Hey, so here we are again for part two of the Genesis 9 and 10. Today, we're only going to be talking about chapter 10 since we already talked about it yesterday for Genesis 9, which was talking about the covenant after the flood and when God established the rainbow. And then we also talked about some drama with Noah's sons. And with that, we are now going to part two, where it's now talking about the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These names that they have right here, whew, I'm not even gonna hold y'all. This is funky. There's some funky names. Um, so bear with us. I know there's probably somebody that's like, wait a minute, that's not how you actually pronounce it, but this is how we're going to get through it. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to go through Genesis chapter 10, verse 1 through 4, which we'll talk about Japheth descendants, and then we'll um, break down Ham's descendants, verse 6 through 20, and then we'll wrap it up with Shem's descendants, verse 21 to 31. And that will cover the descendants from that, and then just read verse 32. And then next week, we will continue on with 11 and 12. So in Genesis 10, verse 1, it reads, "This is the account of the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the three sons of Noah. Many children were born to them after the great flood. Descendants of Japheth." So here we go. The descendants of Japheth were Gomar, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Mishchesh, Mishchesh, and Tyrus. The descendants of Gomar were Ashkenaz, Repeth, Repeth, and Togarmah. The descendants of Javan was Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodim. Their descendants became the seafaring people that spread out to various lands, each identified by its own language, clan, and national identity. Whew. So we're gonna stop there. Those are some names right there, baby. um, so as I was researching and going through the Bible, trying to find out more about Japheth and where his descendants end up going, because it doesn't really talk a lot about it. The only thing that is said in Genesis is that they were a blessed people, and that Ham's descendants, Canaan specifically, will be a servant to Japheth. Other than that, there isn't much to talk about them. Um, but we will um, go through some of their names because one of the names actually, well, two, was actually found in Ezekiel. So Gomer, what is said is that they are believed to have went to Western Europe. So they were basically um, the heads of like basically the German area. Some theologians believe that they just went basically north of Israel. Now, this person, Mag-Og. They went to Central Asia and Russia. Now, his name is mentioned in Ezekiel 38 through 39 and Revelations 20, verse 8. I'm going to turn to Revelations 20, verse 8, just to see what it says. And it reads, I'm going to go start at verse 7. When thousands of years come to end, Satan will be let out of his prison. He will go out to deceive the nations called Gog and Magog in every corner of the earth. He will gather them together in a battle, a mighty army as numerous as sand along the seashore. So that's the last time that that name was mentioned, and like you said, later on in Ezekiel and also in Revelations, where it said Magog. That area is supposed to be basically where the last battle of Armageddon is going to be taking place. So that's it. That's all we really know anything truly about that. Medes or Medes, this is over in the Persian area. The ancient Iran. Then we have Javan. They were more in the Greek area. Then we have Tubal, was over by Turkey. And then Meshech, Caucasus area. And again, they were also mentioned in Ezekiel. And then the last one, Tyras. And that one's over like in the Southeast Europe. So if y'all could imagine where the ark was settled at, and it was saying that in verse, let me go back to it. Chapter 8. Oh, I had it. In the mountains of Arat. They basically have a location where that ark could possibly be at, but from that point on, they begin to spread out. And when they spread out, some had went towards the east, some went over to the west and the north, and then some went down south. But a lot of the people that the Japheth family, they started to spread out, and they stayed further up north and then over to the west. Then it was also said that it's a possibility. I've been looking at some of what the theologians have said, and um, I'm just putting out there what is being said out there for the family of Japheth, because we have no, we're not too, there's no certainty of where um, whose lineage comes from them, but there's a possibility that they were either the head leaders of the Chinese family or the Japanese. Like I said, I don't know. I'm just going off of what has been said about that, but it has nothing in here at all in the Bible. I don't want to like stay stuck on Japheth because there's not a lot of history surrounding him or whatnot. But I do know that because of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, all the world, every human being can be traced back to one of these three men. And then all these people can be traced back to Noah. and then all the way down to Adam. So that's all. We're going to continue reading on Ham. Verse 6 says, the descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabeth, Rama, Sabetek. The descendants of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. Cush, also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Since he was the greatest hunter in the world, his name became preferable. People would say that this man is like Nimrod, the greatest hunter in the world. He built his kingdom in the land of Babylonia, with the cities of Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. From there, he expanded his territory in Assyria, building the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin, the great cities located between Nineveh and Calah. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites and the Ananites and the Levites and the Nephtalites and the Pathurites and the Cashulites and the Caphatorites, from whom the Philistines came. Interesting. Canaan, also son of Sidon, the ancestors of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hittites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zamorites, the Hamathites. The Canaanite clans eventually spread out, and the territory of Canaan extended from Sidon in the north to Gerar and Gaza in the south, and the east as far as Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeomah near Lasha. These are the descendants of Ham, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. But stop there. This was Ham. This was Ham. My God. Like, I feel like I need chapstick going through all of that. I feel like I got my lips activated. Want to slobber on myself. I'm like, like Pootie Tang over here. Oh my God. So
Joy,
here,
what it is, you just got to put a little black twist to it, like Javon. You know, you were saying Javan. I think it was Javon, you know?
you know what? It possibly could be. You know what I mean? Maybe because I was raised up in the great Pacific Northwest, there might be some silent Z's and P's in
Hey,
here. Look,
put a little black twist to it and you can, no problem.
like, this is some Lepetize. Lepetez. Like, only thing I know is somebody had a list because this is a lot. This is a lot. My God. But to go through Ham's list, one thing that I want to really highlight is there is a psalm. Let me see if I can find it real quick. 2 seconds. I made the notes. Psalm 78. It's either 78 or 105. 7851. Okay, so here in 78, um, if we look at this whole entire like several chapters, this is like giving praise up to God about like who he is and what he redeemed his descendants and his people, his chosen ones. And what was so interesting in here is that it actually talks about the descendants of Ham. I thought that was so cool because here in I think it's 78. Let me look at 105 because it was one of my I had both of them down here. 105:23. Yes. In Psalms 105:23, and it says, Then Israel arrived in Egypt. So when we like start talking about um Jacob on a later time in several weeks further down, we're going to be talking about how Jacob had his 12 children and he's now being a foreigner walking around, and then he settles. There's a story talking about Joseph, how he was sold into slavery by
Mm-hmm.
his brothers, and from that point he ends up becoming Pharaoh. When Jacob's whole family, because of the famine and all, goes into Egypt, this is where it's talking about and it's highlighting like the praises of God. But I'm just going to read the first few verses so it can kind of just highlight what I was just saying. It says, Then Israel arrived in Egypt. Jacob lived as a foreigner in the land of Ham. And the Lord multiplied the people of Israel until they became too mighty for their enemies. Then he turned the Egyptians against Israel, and they plotted against the Lord's servants. So when you keep reading through here, like especially between 78 and 105, I think it goes all the way to like 109 or something like that. It will like say that the descendants of Ham, like it will like keep bringing that up when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to anything with Egypt. And how do we know that these were the descendants of Ham and which son this was? Well, according to the Bible, it shows that Mizraim was basically the Egyptians coming from that era, coming from that timeline, which was like kind of interesting to say because if when we get ready to go into Shem's timeline, you got Abraham as a distant cousin to Mizraim's, distant cousin. So really, when we get all the way back to Joseph being sold into slavery, yeah, people had populated the earth, but really these are family members. Like
Mm-hmm.
they are close. They're not close knit, but this is how they were treating each other. Not only was Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers, but it's like, man, even there's a part where Joseph's brothers had sold him into the Ishmaelites. Well, who were the Ishmaelites?
Mm-hmm.
The Ishmaelites will later on find out were from Abraham's son, his firstborn. So from Isaac's children in their timeline, you'll find out that, hey, man, you're really like selling one of our brothers over into Ishmael's family. It's like wild. Then they just went ahead and passed them off. Like, forget the Shem family. Now we're gonna go ahead and send them off to the Ham family. This sounds. It sounds wild, but it's just so many years has gone by, and people have populated the earth and everything else. And so, of course, they're not relating like, hey, you're my 423th cousin or
Right.
anything. But yeah, so that was one thing that was kind of cool and different. Also from Canaan, where he had been cursed by his grandfather. And we talked about basically what happened and why I believe that he was the reason why he was cursed and all. Canaan, as you read through the other books of the Bible, the rest of the Old Testament, there were the Canaanites lived in the
Mhm.
land, and they came from Ham's descendants. They were
Mhm.
all pulled away. And this is one thing that I want to kind of like resonate. Why is it that they kept clashing with Israel, with the Israelites, with Shem's descendants? And I just want to say it like this. If you imagine that you got cursed, that we don't want to imagine it, but I'm only thinking if I got cursed and my kids are basically going to follow underneath this curse, how would I react? Like, matter of fact, not that I got cursed. Let's say if one of my parents was cursed and this is what was put on me, like, oh, you know what? When it comes to the Turner family, Joy, you're going to always be beneath them. Instantly from childbirth, from anybody else, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna always
Mhm.
be an enemy to that person. And when I see her kids or anybody within that lineage, I will always want to feel like, you know what, you're not better than me. Look, T ain't worried about anybody trying to be better than or whatever. She's just trying to live her life. She's over here made some grapes, got her some cantaloupes, and be like, here, Joy. But I'm up her like, you ain't that good.
Mhm.
And so I want to always clash with you and tell you to stay away from me. Or if you come near me, I'm going to overpower you.
Mhm.
So as we travel through, and we're going to keep coming back to this time because when a name pops up, I want to see if we can find any one of these names in either Ham's descendants or Shem's descendants. Well, we already declared that Japheth, poor thing, we don't have anything going on with this one. Um, then let me see what else did I have here. Would put what was it? The area that they reside in, all of Ham's descendants, was mainly in like Iraq, um, around the Red Sea, kind of just basically right around where Israel, Palestine, that whole area, Egypt, they spread all over Egypt when it came to that. And so that means from the ark, they went further south, but they kind of stayed nearby for whatever reason. They didn't go too far off. Other than that, there's not a whole lot until we venture off into the later chapters. But please highlight, put a circle around because you're going to always go back to either Mizraim and that which is in verse 13 and 15. You will see that, especially also with Mizraim, with the descendants from them, that the Philistines came from. So you're talking about David fought Goliath
Mhm.
right here. Canaan, you will see a lot with the Hivites and um, all these other ites, Jebusites, Hittites, Amorites, you will keep hearing those names being brought up so much because one, they entered into their territory and took over that land. And you will see these names be brought up so much, especially in Judges, when they left from Egypt going into the promised land. You will hear these names brought up a lot, and especially Sodom and Gomorrah. Lord have mercy.
Mm.
So then all of that was Ham. So let's go ahead and wrap up Shem. So the sons of Shem were born to, or the sons were born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth. Shem
Okay.
was the ancestor of all the descendants of Eber. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, Arm, Aram, Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Our Arphaxad was the father of Sheila. Is it Sheila?
I think it is.
Okay. And Sheila was the father of Eber. Eber had two sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division. For during his lifetime, the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His
Mm.
brother's name was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor of Almadad and Shelah and Hazar Maeth, Jira, Hadorm, Uzael, Dikel, Obel, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. Jobab. The territory they occupied, See, I can't even read no.
Occupied,
I
girl, occupied.
got me checked up. I'm so checked up. Jesus help me. Extended from Mesh all the way from Seafar in the eastern mountains. These are the descendants of Shem, identified by the clan, language, and territory in the national identity. Lord, I'm about to put this on the internet.
Joy,
Like,
you're gonna redo. I know you're gonna re-record this without me on here. You're like, I'm doing this again.
bro, I'm just putting it up there. I'm just letting it be. You know, Lord said be obedient. I'm just gonna be obedient. It is because I got dry mouth. My lips are chapped. I'm saying these names. My tongue is tired. It's telling me it's ready for their lunch break. I'm over it. But so from Shem's descendants, as we're gonna tap into them again, but one thing I can say about this lineage is the Joktan. He had too many kids, and I'm just like, bro, listen, we're gonna pray over these names. Like, God changed Abraham's name from Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah,
Mhm, mhm.
Jacob to Israel. Some of these other names need to be changed. Like, give them a John, a Jake. Like, oh, oh my gosh.
What happened to Mary and
You know what I'm saying?
um
Gabriel. But we're gonna tap into this again when we hit the next chapter from Shem all the way to Abram. It's now just giving us just an open book, and we're going to also tap in, and I would circle verse 25 because we're going to tap back into 25 and 26 about the two sons.
Oh, okay.
later on in the chapters, because they're going to get brought up again, and the rest of them, it's just really just highlighting where they had went. Now,
Mm-hmm.
where they went, now remember, they ended up occupying um like Ham's descendants in their area. And what was interesting is that they also kind of stayed within that same area, but they went further down into Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Ham's descendants kind of stayed up more north, but Shem had like cover a lot of Africa, and they stayed over in Egypt. What's interesting is that when we go into um, Shem's descendants and we talk about his lineage, we're going to start seeing that they started getting into idol worship
Mm.
within this short period of time. It's really not a short period of time because, they're still living like a couple hundred years old or whatnot. But during these lineage, this timeline or whatnot, these people started focusing away from God, focusing away from um, the creator and all. They looked at like, even though there was a boat that they could still see, because they start spreading out and having children, they began to like focus on other things like the sun god, the rain god, um, different aspects that were like taking the attention away from God Himself to other things. And it does show that even in Abram, soon to be Abraham, that even his father worshiped other gods.
Mm.
That is so sad to me because no matter what is being taught, somehow within this small genealogy, that people started pulling away from God. They started getting back into the old habits of violence um, and doing wrong things. And from there, they basically started worshiping their own type of God. And we're going to get more into that next week. And it really does highlight that in chapter 11. And we're going to touch base with 11 and 12 because um, this is where God is now having a relationship when it comes to Abraham for the first time in a long time since Noah, that he's going to have a relationship with somebody one on one.
Mm.
So that's the end of chapter 10. I just wanted to highlight a couple scriptures because as we start traveling around, especially once we start talking about Abraham, um, there's going to be certain names and places, and we're going to be able to go back and be able to say, ooh, and who was his great, great, great daddy
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. But that is all for today. I'm excited for next week because we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of Genesis. And I love this because what we're going to be getting into is the heart position that God wanted a relationship with mankind. And as we start traveling it through this and unpacking it, I hope that we see the faith that Abraham displayed through all this, and what God had basically wanted all along was with a relationship with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's all. Hopefully, come back next week, Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah.
Yeah.